All right, hi everybody, and welcome to the Tri-Week Triathlon Tournament Bracket Show. So we got USA Triathlon Hall of Famer Bob Babbitt here, as well as Chief Sport Development Officer with USA Triathlon, Tim Yount, and they are going to make their picks live. You guys excited?
We are. It's sort of like Obama during the NCAA tournament, choosing his brackets, except this is better.
Yeah.
But I've done 4 brackets and I've spread them around the city, just so you know. I figured that was pretty important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tim would know at USA Triathlon, we've had a few for March Madness every year, some bracket challenges. I don't know, Tim, if you've ever won any of those. I don't know if you have some experience coming in as a former champion or anything.
No former champion, just loser every time I do them. So I'm just getting accustomed to paying some of my money, I think.
Nice.
Well, for those who aren't familiar with this, during National Triathlon Week this year, we want to find out what the best U.S. triathlon moment ever is. So we've been working on this for weeks. We've involved people from our staff, from people who are experts outside of the organization, who have helped put this together. In honor of the year 2020, we have 40 moments overall, 20 on each side of the bracket. And ultimately, it's up to our audience to vote on this every day. So the first day of National Triathlon Week, we'll have a vote out there for round 1. Round 2 will be on Tuesday. You can find it on our USA Triathlon social media channels, on our website. And each day you'll be able to vote round by round, matchup by matchup, until ultimately our audience has decided the greatest triathlon moment of all time. But until then, we're going to have Bob and Tim make their picks. You guys can follow along and see and debate with these guys. So let me pull up on my end the bracket. All right, guys. So I got Bob. I got your bracket right here. Can you see this all right?
A little teeny, but that's okay. You're going to go through them one by one anyway.
We'll zoom in. And then, Tim, I got your bracket right here. So we'll go matchup by matchup. Starting with the first round here, we're going all the way to the swim region. And so think of these as the play-in matchups. And with these moments, some of these are performances. We got Gwen Jorgensen's Olympic gold up there. Some of these are more just kind of the impact on the sport and how it helped grow the sport. Well, we tried to do our best to compile these into 40 moments. I think we had like 70 or 80 at one point. But here is the bracket that we will be voting on. So first round matchup in the swim region, we got 8 seed. This is the Danskin Women's Triathlon Series versus the 9 seed, Mike Riley. You are an Ironman, his iconic phrase now that he first coined in 1991. Tim, what do you got in this one?
This was a tough one. You got Mike Riley, who probably for saying you are an Ironman is as well known as anybody in the sport. He's a Hall of Famer for USA Triathlon as well. The Danskin Women's Series, which back in the early 90s, 5 of the top 10 largest races in America were Danskin races. Seattle had 2,500. So this was a tough call. But you know what? If you're looking for iconic presence within the sport, I got to go with the upset here, the 9 seed Mike Riley.
All right, Tim's got Mike Riley going to the second round. Bob, what do you got?
I would vote for Mike Riley because people come up to me, think I'm Mike Riley at a lot of events. I tell them if they give me $20, I'll call them an Ironman. They don't have to do the race. I've made a lot of money off of Mike Riley over the years, but the Danskin Women's Triathlon Series, pretty powerful. I think what they did over the years, at that point, we were probably 80 to 85% male. And seeing an all-women event with 2,500, 2,000 women sponsored by BMW was huge for our sport. So I will go with Danskin.
All right. Already a disagreement. We're off to a great start here. This is awesome.
Absolutely.
Sticking in the swim region, our other first round matchup is a 7 seed, which I'm sure is close to Tim's heart here. NCAA emerging sport status. This is when triathlon at the collegiate level reached emerging sport status, and hopefully soon, Tim, becoming an official NCAA sport versus the 10 seed Gear Revolutions. This is just the evolution over the course of time of all of our triathlon gear, from aero bars to wetsuits, you name it, GPS tracking. We're a lot farther ahead now than we were in 1974. So Tim, I'll start with you. What do you got in this one?
Yeah, Gear Revolution. I'm sure many bike shops are probably named after that for really what they want to pre-lead prelude with people coming to their shops and buying stuff. You know, I've been around the NCAA process since the very beginning, and I've seen it grow to where it is today. We're at 36 different sports. It's been a great movement for NCAA. I've got to go with the 7 seed, even though the gear revolution has been amazing, from Greg Laurent, the Mond bars, to a lot of other things that have come along, wetsuits and gear bags and stuff like that. So I'm going to go with the 7 seed here.
You're going with 7 seed, and I'm going to go. And this is the big upset, because Tim was so involved with NCAA, I would say, with NCAA, and I'm going to have to go along with that as well. NCAA is huge. Gear Revolution is great. I've still got my Oakley over-the-top sunglasses for people without ears. I've got the seat shifter. I've got the bone phones. All those early innovations. But emerging sports is huge. NCAA.
All right, we're in agreement. NCAA emerging sports status. Moving on to the round of 32. We're going to keep going down here. And Tim, I believe I'm on your bracket right now. So let me scroll down here to the bike region. So once again, the play-in matchup. This is the 8 seed, Hampton University, becoming the first HBCU to add women's collegiate triathlon as varsity program, versus 9, Matt McElroy's 2019 World Triathlon Series lead silver, the first podium finish for a U.S. male at the WTS level in about a decade. Tim, what do you got?
Yeah, Matt McElroy, what a story. And the men have always just kind of been overshadowed by the women. Matt comes up with some incredible performances. This one at Leeds goes down the history. They're saying it was one of the most competitive fields for a race ever. And Mr. McElroy comes in and pulls out the silver. But like the Hampton University becomes the first HBCU. I'm not sure people really understand how difficult it is to add an NCAA program. But when you add one that's an HBCU, when you add one that's going to make a commitment to NCAA, when you work with them every day like I have, they're going to make some noise in the business of Division I's within the NCAA movement. This was really, really big for us. We had a second one come along right in the coattails of what they did at Hampton. I got to go with the 8 seed here.
All right, Tim has got Hampton. Moving on.
I'm with Hampton as well. That's huge for our sport.
Yeah, and kind of speaking to what you said before, Tim, it really just speaks to collegiate triathlon as a whole and how important this is in growing our sport at the collegiate level. So really exciting to see that news, and we can't wait to see the future of our sport, hopefully soon becoming an official NCAA sport. Sticking with the bike region, also our second play-in matchup in this region, and sticking with the women's collegiate triathlon theme here, this is the first women's collegiate triathlon national championships in 2015, 1 year after receiving emerging sport status, versus the 10 seed, the Hy-Vee triathlon prize purse, which at one point was up to $1 million, huge for our sport and all of our elite athletes. Bob, I'll start with you on this one. What did you have in this matchup?
You know, maybe it's because we lived through it. I thought the Hy-Vee thing was so important just because it was a national brand, Hy-Vee, grocery store chain, putting $1 million into our sport. At the time was huge, not to take anything away from the Women's Collegiate Nationals, but I go Hy-Vee.
All right, Bob, with the 10 seed upset. Tim, what do you got?
You know, it's interesting. When Hy-Vee first reached out about this sport of triathlon, they actually called Jeff Dyrick and me on the phone and said, hey, we're really interested in doing some things within the sport. What might that mean for us? We about fell over and said, oh, this would be great. And all of a sudden they started talking about wanting to be $1 million purse and making an impact in the sport. There's no question they did that. But then again, you look at the 7 seed here, that was a big year for us. You know, we had just started putting together some programs. We were in Florida for a great race. We had some of the stars there. Abby Levine out of CU actually wins the race. Other great performers that are elites now today that kind of were able to use that as a springboard. But I'm with Bob. That Hy-Vee triathlon prize purse, $700,000 in 2007. Laura Bennett comes home with $200,000. Really, they were the event of the outside of Ironman, you know, for the Olympic distance for so long for what they did, and we got to make an upset here for Hy-Vee, which looks like we did.
Yep.
All right, a couple upsets here. High V moving on to the second round. We'll get to that matchup later. Sticking in the first round, playing the matchups, we're going to the other side of the bracket here. We'll start at the bottom, the transition region. So once again, we got an 8-9 matchup. Tim, I'll start with you. We have in the 2014 World Triathlon Series, Gwen Jorgensen and Sarah True, who's Groff at the time, finished first and second in the series, which was awesome seeing both of them at the top of the podium. And similarly, speaking of U.S. success, 2016 Junior World Championships, Taylor Knibb and Austin Hinman both win world titles in the same year representing the U.S. Tim, two great moments here. What's your pick to move on to round two?
Yeah, it was the Jorgensen True 1-2 finish was pretty amazing. Gwen actually blew that whole field of athletes away that year. She scores over 5,000 points. Sarah True comes in fourth in Edmonton, what she had to get to hang on to that second place. That was really big for our sport at a particular point in time too, because we showed we not only have power, we got power at the top, which was really key. The Knibb Heinemann, Matt, I was there for those races. Hinman, he's behind, coming off the bike. He's got to run people down. He passes the Canadian, inside of a half mile to go. Crowd's going nuts. He's this 6'4" kid, really just lopes, kind of like a Hunter Kemper, really fast. Love to watch him race. And then you got Knibb on the other side, who broke away on the bike, was never seen again. The 1-1 punch for our junior male and female was really exciting. Even in Mexico, it was nice to see the Americans and others so happy about what happened. I'm gonna go the 9 seed here. I'm gonna say this was unprecedented for us. We may not see this again for a long, long, long time. Hopefully we do. But I just love what they were able to do. They each won those races in a different way.
I'll go 8 seed. I think that at the time, because there was an era where the U.S. was not considered a factor at the ITU level, and having Gwen and Sarah go 1-2 was really, really impactful.
All right, so Bob's got Jorgensen and Sarah True moving on to round 2.
Yep.
Moving on here, sticking with the transition region, we'll go down to the 7-10 matchup right here. So this is another huge moment for our sport. A 7-seed triathlon being added to the Paralympics. So it, of course, make its Paralympic debut in 2016 with a ton of medals for the U.S. Versus the 10-seed Pat Griskus becoming the first amputee Ironman. Bob, we're on your bracket right here. What did you have in this matchup?
Well, as Pat Griskus was a very special guy. Actually, he was killed on the Ironman course after he had finished the race, and a year or two later was training on the course when he was killed by a cement truck. Great athlete, and he led to Jim Mclaren and led to everything else. And really what he led to was triathlon being added to the Paralympics in 2016, and being there to watch the first Paralympic triathlon was as impactful as watching the first triathlon in the first Olympic triathlon back in 2000. It was huge for the sport and huge for challenged athletes. So I go number 7.
All right, Bob's got triathlon in the Paralympics. Moving on. Tim, what did you think about this matchup?
Yeah, when you look at Pat Griskus, 86 and 87 Ironman winner, he's putting his name out there as a guy who's willing to make a commitment, world record holder and all that. Really amazing. Bob, the space extremely well and the impact that Pat had on the sport.
Mm-hmm.
Triathlon added to the Paralympics, though, in 2010. That was the springboard for where we are today. We go into 2016, we have an amazing performance from our athletes. It's only going to get bigger and better for the U.S. This was really critically timed for us to have an impact with the para-athletes. I think it's really impacted the view of the world and what it can mean to be part of para-triathlon. So I'm going to go at the 7 seed here as well.
And obviously a lot more Paralympic moments for us coming up later on the bracket. So many to choose from. That will be a common theme here in our bracket. So that is it for the transition region. Tim, I'm on your brackets. Let me scroll up here to the run region. And so first, our first matchup here is a really good matchup. So age group legends. These are all of the athletes, kind of the fountain of youth moments, who have just shown that our sport is something you can do for life. So this is Sister Madonna, Wayne Fong, Molly Hayes, so many amazing athletes. versus the ESPY Paratriathlon winner. So we've had 5 paratriathletes take home ESPY awards at ESPN's yearly award show. That's the 9 seed. Tim, what did you have in this matchup?
Well, and to add your commentary about the ESPYs in 2019, Elisa and Mark both win, right? And same year. That hasn't happened before. And they do it for some amazing performances. They go undefeated in competition, and just the way they are as people and as proponents for the sport, and speaking about the way that triathlons change our lives, pretty impactful. When you first put this on the bracket, Nick, I went back and started looking at all the legends, and there have been some amazing legends. We've got Jim Ward in the Hall of Fame. We had Sushma Dawn in the Hall of Fame. We had Bill Bell, who just passed in his late 90s. These are people who have inspired the generation of athletes who are entering into their 70s and 80s to say, I'm never too old to do this. Bill Schweizer wins Athlete of the Year at age 70. Never happened up to that point. It will probably never happen again. I'm going to pull the 8 through the bracket as age group legends to advance to that against that 1 seed.
All right. And they'll have a tough second round matchup. We'll get to that later. Bob, what did you have? This is a tough matchup. What did you have in this one?
You know what? I'm going with the ESPY award winners mainly because I like when we step outside of sport, when we step outside of our mainstream triathlete magazine, our core followers. And a lot of times we speak to the choir. Well, now when we've got our para athletes like Sarah Reinertsen and so many others, and Mark Barr, people are recognizing who these athletes are from other sports and from mainstream sports like ESPN. Recognizing our athletes is huge for the future of our sport. So I will go, as much respect as I have for all of our age group athletes, and I'm in the 65 to death category, so I identify. I'm going with our ESPY award.
All right.
Pulling the upset, Bob.
The 9 over the 8.
Big one.
This is the last first round matchup here. In the play-in matchup, if you will. So this is the round of 40. Also in the run region, 2 really, really important athletes in our sport going head-to-head here. So the 7 seed is Max Finnell. He obviously became the first African-American professional triathlete, really has done a lot for our sport, helping inner-city kids get really welcome to the sport, versus a 10 seed, Jim Mclaren, in his 1992 Ironman World Championship, his incredible performance. I know, Bob, you can speak more to that. We're in the first round here. Bob, what did you have in this matchup? You got a photo.
Jim Mclaren, right here. There we go.
Did he sign that? Bob, he certainly signed that too, right?
This is actually, my getting inducted into winning the Jim Mclaren Award, which is the biggest award we do for Challenge Athletes Foundation. So, which was on our 25th anniversary. Jimmy, he changed perceptions about what somebody could do with a prosthetic, and obviously led to the creation of a charity that has now raised over $112 million and sent out over 26,000 grants. Max is incredibly amazing what he has done, and he's going to lead to a lot more people following him. But my heart's with Jim Mclaren.
And in 1992, Bob, was it 10 hours and 42 minutes, right?
Yeah.
42.
93. Yeah, 92, wasn't it?
Yep.
Tim, what did you have in this matchup?
3:16 marathoner as well. That's pretty.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as Bob alluded to, you're talking about prosthetics in the 1980s and 90s, which is just night and day from what we have today.
You didn't have graphite back then. You didn't have carbon fiber. These were one step ahead of Captain Hook. So it's what he did is really mind-boggling.
And the impact he's had on CAF as well, Bob, right?
Well, absolutely. He was the reason we started Challenge Athletes Foundation. And after he was injured again, he became a quadriplegic, and that led to, like I said, 26 years and 26,000 grants and $112 million raised. And it's all that is based off of what Jimmy brought to the game.
Tim, going next to you, what did you have in this matchup?
Yeah, I can't say enough about Jim Mclaren. Obviously, in our Hall of Fame, done amazing stuff for the sport. Bob, you you know that as well as anybody. Max comes out of the soccer field where he's been a star player with an MCL injury. Has a person tells him, "Hey, you should really try this sport." So what's he do? Jumps into the sport. And all of a sudden, he starts podiuming in all these different events, Philadelphia, and all the good races. And then in his 4th year as a triathlete, he qualifies to be an elite. Pretty amazing territory. And the speed at which he did it is pretty impressive. But I too, just knowing Jim Mclaren, the impact that he has had on the sport, that he continues to have today in name, I'm going to pull the 10 upset on this one as well.
All right, we both got Jim Mclaren moving to the second round, where again, we'll have some really good matchups in the second round here. So that is it for the first round. Let me zoom out here a little bit. And we are moving on now to round 2. So this is where you have a lot of the 1 seeds. We didn't talk about that at the beginning, but I do want to highlight the 4 1 seeds in this tournament bracket. We have Gwen Jorgensen's Olympic gold medal in 2016. You'll see that at the top left of the bracket in the swim region. Our second 1 seed is in the bike region. Triathlon is born in 1974. It's kind of hard to imagine where we'd be right now if we didn't have the first race. That is one of our 1 seeds. Moving on to the transition region, the Iron War. We'll get more into that later, but this iconic battle between Mark Allen and Dave Scott in the 1989 Ironman World Championship. And then sticking with Ironman, Julie Moss in 1982, her Crawl of Fame, which kind of just captured the hearts and minds of so many people watching on national TV. So now we get to see these 1 seeds. There's so many great moments in our sport, and we're going to start going through them now, starting with the swim region. So, Tim, I'm on your side of the bracket. We'll go up to this round of 32 matchup. We have the 1 seed, Gwen Jorgensen's Olympic gold, versus you had Mike Riley advancing to the round 2, his "You are an Ironman" phrase.
You're breaking up, Nick, but I think you just teed me up for the 1 versus the 9.
I did,
Yep.
yeah. This is the nature of Zoom with trying to do this over Zoom.
Yes. Yeah, it's amazing, Gwen and how she was found through the collegiate recruitment program and Barb Lindquist and everything that she was doing at the USAT at the time, and how she simply went from being a 2-sport athlete in college to being the without question the best triathlete that we've ever seen, female side anyway, arguably the best overall. I've got to pull the 1 seed over to the right hand side of the bracket. Just the impact and what it's done for our sport, and how she's inspired so many athletes that maybe don't even really know much about triathlon, who may someday be looking for the same type of feat that she was able to accomplish.
I have a feeling this will be a popular pick going forward for you guys and for our audience. Bob, did you also have Gwen moving on to round 2?
And who was yeah, I mean, winning Olympic gold is pretty damn special. And just the way she did it, I mean, she couldn't, when she started in 2010, she couldn't clip in. She was falling over at stoplights. And before you know it, she's on the 2012 Olympic team and then winning the gold in 2016. Pretty amazing story.
And the only Olympic gold for the U.S. so far. We hope to have more going forward, at least on the Olympic side. We'll get to paratriathlon here pretty soon. 4-5 matchup. This is a good one. So we have USTS National Impact. That's the U.S. Triathlon Series and just its impact on the sport versus Sheila Taramina's 04 ITU World Title. Bob, what did you have in this one?
USTS, because of the longevity of the series and when it started in '82, it became a showcase. You didn't have to do an Ironman to make a living at the sport. So Scott Molina and Scott Tinley and Dave Scott and Mark Allen and so many of the great women who were in our sport, Kathleen McCartney and Julie Moss, it became a showcase for our sport. And not just in podunk. It was we're talking events in New York and Chicago, in LA, major markets, and got that national media in all those big regional markets. So USTS, as great as Sheila is, I think USTS had a bigger impact.
Tim?
Yeah, I'm going to echo what what Bob said. You know, the star, if you were a star in the sport, you were competing in that series. I had a chance in 1989 to show up at San Clemente. It was a celebration. And what it taught me is that it's more than just racing. It's celebrating. It's having people witness the sport maybe for the first time and being in a beautiful location. Bob, you touched on the great cities, and there have been a bunch of them that they've been to for this series over the years. You know, Sheila, it's amazing. She actually created a whole different style of racing, right? Where she would break out of the swim, time trial on the bike, and then she would hang on for the run. Still a good runner, 37-minute 10K runner. But when she won this world title, it kind of woke up the world, and they said, wow, Sheila's the real deal. She can make an impact. But I still have got to go with USTS, National Impact. It was so critical at the time, as Bob noted, that there are a few things that were as critical as that was for the growth of the sport.
So we're both in agreement there. We got the 4 seed moving on. We're going to scroll down here to, again, another really intriguing matchup. This is the 2 seed. Think of this as the first Ironman in 1978. This is when the Ironman craze began, the first world championship in Hawaii, versus, and Tim, in your side of the bracket, you had the NCAA emerging sport status moving on. So Tim, what do you have in this one?
There's no 2-7 upset. No chance. I don't even need to talk about the Ironman craze. Because of where we are today in this sport, I mean, you got to look back to Ironman in '78 and say, Bob, you witnessed it, you lived it. It hardly anything comes close to that, what its impact has been.
Yeah, Ironman, you know, obviously my vote's the same way, just because the sport and the word Ironman became interchangeable because people were watching it first on ABC and then on NBC, and so many of our iconic moments from Iron War, from Pat Griskus, from Jim Mclaren, from Anderson, they came at Ironman because not only did they cover the elites off the front, but during their coverage, they showcased Dick and Rick Hoyt. They showcased those amazing stories. So every aspect of what Ironman brought to the table helped to enhance our sport.
Bob, obviously you mentioned Mark Allen. He's going to come up a lot in this bracket. We have him here in this next matchup as a 3 seed. People always associate him with Ironman, and rightfully so for all of his world titles, but he also won an ITU world title in 1989. So he's our 3 seed versus a really good 6 seed. This is the first U.S. mixed relay world championship in 2016 in Hamburg. So this was Joe Malloy, Ben Canute, Gwen Jorgensen, Kirsten Casper, really good group of 4 there that won the first mixed relay world title. Bob, what do you have in this matchup?
Well, I'd go Mark Allen mainly because it was the first ever ITU world title. It was in Avignon, France, and Mark Allen, an American, wins it. That also was the same year he won Iron War. But Mark was the very best triathlete in the world at that time, and having that, what became the Olympics was really started at that ITU World Championship.
Any disagreements from you, Tim?
No, and when you look back at what Mark was able to do, he was the only guy under 2 hours in that race, right? I'm never really challenged. He was running comfortably. I was actually there watching it, running comfortably at the finish. You know, it was just a great moment. Our first ITU had their first official meeting. That's essentially when they started. It was just a great weekend for the sport. And to have an American be able to wave the American flag in that first one is truly very honoring for us as a country. The mixed relay, I got to tell you, that was a really competitive team. It was early in the process for understanding what this mixed relay really was about. We've always been good. That was the showcase for us to come out to say, if you're going to be good, you better be really good because Americans are going to be strong in this style of racing. And we certainly showed it that day.
I think the other thing with the mixed relay, which is going to be fascinating, being showcased at the 2021 games, as much of an impact as triathlon had when it first aired in 2000 and the Sydney Olympics was the opening event of the games. This mixed relay is going to bring people into our sport who've never heard of us before. One, we're going to have 2 events on television, and 2, the mixed relay is perfect for television because of the 4 athletes, fast, quick, great for television. It's going to be huge impact. I think we're going to see huge growth after this first mixed relay is aired.
Yeah, we're super excited for 2021, and I think we'll have to redo this bracket next year, hopefully after some awesome
Yes.
Olympic moments for the U.S.
Yep.
Going back to another 1 seed. So now we're in the next region here in the bike region. This is one of those obviously very important moments. Our first triathlon, the very first one in 1974 in San Diego, Mission Bay. Tim, any upsets here with the 1 seed triathlon being born versus Hampton?
I just shake my head.
Come on, you can do it.
Should I just?
Bob, were you Bob, you were 16 when this happened, right? Isn't that right? You were 16?
No, I think I was like 10. Come on. No, I'm already out of college, Timmy. Come on now. Yeah, but the first triathlon, and again, the fact that it was part of San Diego Track Club, and it wasn't really, we didn't really look. I came out in '78, but even back then, triathlon was sort of a workout for the track club. Right? It was just sort of an event down at Fiesta Island. But that first triathlon led to John and Judy Collins, who were in San Diego for that first triathlon, starting Ironman 4 years later.
46 people showed up, which is pretty amazing number to think about.
And it was reverse, right? It was run, bike, swim. Is that correct?
Yeah, you swam between the little islands out there.
Swim, bike, run. It was a short bike. It was a 5-mile bike. That was crazy, but yeah.
Yeah. So it's amazing to see how far it's come. And this is kind of the perfect example, going from 1974 to our next matchup, 2019, and just showing all the great moments that have happened in our sport's 46-year history. In this matchup, Bob, we have Katie Zafaris' 2019 ITU World title, which I think was made even more amazing by the fact that she got better every year. She was 5th in 2015, 4th in 2016, 3rd in 2017, all the way until she finally cleared that hurdle and won the world title, versus another world title, Karen Smyers in 1990. This is the second ITU World Championship in Orlando. Bob, what did you have in this one?
You know, what's tough about that is that was being at Disney World in 1990 with Karen Smyers and her coming from behind to run down Carol Montgomery, Aaron Baker, and Joy Hansen and win that with Minnie Mouse holding the banner, finish banner, was pretty awesome. But what Katie did in 2019 after crashing and getting 20 stitches in her mouth and then coming back to win the win the final was pretty impactful. I'm going with Katie.
Yeah, you mentioned her injury. It was kind of just the overall – that was, in a nutshell, what perseverance and overcoming an injury looks like. I mean, what an amazing performance. Tim?
Yeah, when you look at these on the bracket, if you don't know better, you're thinking, oh, they both won titles. But the way you win titles in the ITU level now is a series of points, right? And so you get enough points, you win the title at the end of the year. Usually it comes right after the grand final. So it's really, really hard to do. You got to be consistent and you got to be good, and you got to pick the right races and the right timing and be good when you do race. The Karen situation, Bob, I love your interview that you did with Karen. I listened to the whole thing. She told some great stories about her dad going crazy at the finish line. And, Karen, in doing that, really set herself apart from the rest of the Americans. Joy had a great series of races, but it was kind of that first step for Karen to say, you know what, making a commitment to the sport, I can really do this. But I'm going to stay with the 4th seed on this one, like Bob.
So we both got Katie Zafaris in her 2019 world title. Moving on to the round of 16. We'll get to that soon. Sticking in the round of 32 here, also in the bike region at the bottom left corner of our bracket, we have Alyssa Seeley, and not just Alyssa Seeley, but Haley Dans and Melissa Stockwell sweeping the podium in the 2016 Paralympics. So what a way to start para-triathlon's debut at the Paralympics. Those three going 1, 2, 3 in their category. Versus, Tim, I'm on your bracket here, High V Triathlon's prize purse. So 210 matchup. Tim, what do you got?
When you break down that sweep, I had a chance to go back and watch the video on that race as I was preparing for this bracket setup. And it was a really, really exciting race. You talk about the Great Brit athlete was in the lead. Our athletes are coming strong on the bike. Elisa actually gets off and has an incredible run. Melissa was in the lead for a while. It was really, really fun to watch. And it'll go down as the first. And it's pretty amazing that we were able to sweep. It hasn't been done since. And I talked to Amanda Duke Belay in our office. She's not sure it's going to be done again because the density of quality competition is such now that a podium sweep is pretty amazing. I'm going to go with the 2 seed to carry forward. Love Hy-Vee and what their impact was. Believe it will forever be part of our lore, our history, but that sweep is pretty amazing.
I agree, and especially when you consider it was on 9/11. Watching the flags go up, watching those 3 women on the podium on 9/11, when we're talking, this is our USA triathlon brackets. So that was one of the most impactful moments I've ever watched myself in person. It was pretty spectacular.
I always just think of the image of the 3 of them on the, with the flag behind them, or them on the podium together with all their medals. Just what a great debut for USA Paratriathlon, and really a sign of some awesome things to come down the road.
Absolutely.
So sticking in the bike region here, we got a 3-6 matchup. Our 3 seed is Hunter Kemper. He's on here a couple times in this bracket. He's the only 4-time Olympian in U.S. history, but this is a non-Olympic year. This is 2005. He finished the year as the #1 ranked male triathlete in the world. One of many honors he received that year, an incredible season. Versus, this is kind of one of those outside the sport, not a performance, but an impactful moment. The 6 seed, this is the 1979 Sports Illustrated article on Ironman, which really, Bob, as I'm sure you can speak to more, put our sport on the map and really got it out there for the whole world to see.
No question about it. And from my perspective, that was the fact that Sports Illustrated, which people nowadays in the ESPN generation, they think ESPN, and Tim and I know that back in the day when Sports Illustrated came out every Thursday, that was our Bible. And to have 8 pages on this crazy event with 15 starters and 12 finishers that led to, and following year, 1980, there was Dave Scott, there was Dave McGilbert from Boston Marathon, there was myself, that overend went on to become world mountain bike champion, John Howard, Chuck Newman. It's that event, that magazine article changed the face of our sport, no question about it.
So is that your pick then, Bob? The 6 seed again with the upset?
SI.
All right, we got the 6 seed going to the second round, SI 79. Tim, what are your thoughts?
May 14th, 1979, Barry McDermott. That was a pretty special moment. Here's the crazy thing. Hunter's season, you noted this, Nick? Speak to this. First escape from Alcatraz, first at Beijing World Cup, first at Mazatlan World Cup, first at Bellingham Nationals, second at Honolulu World Cup, second at Edmonton World Cup, second at Chicago, third at Lifetime Fitness. Oh my gosh. If you could put that up against any resume in a single year and people would be like, that's going to be really, really, really tough to beat. And then he won every award, as you noticed. Triathlon Magazine Athlete of the Year, #1 in the world, Jim Thorpe all-around winner, USOC Sportsman of the Year, Triathlete Magazine Athlete of the Year. But we also know how impactful that SI article was, and it's really, really hard to not acknowledge that and to move it on the bracket.
So you guys both got SI going on to the second round, or Sweet 16, I should say.
Yep.
79 SI. All right. Got some upsets here. This is good. This is exciting. And we'll have Hunter Kemper come up again later in the bracket. So Hunter, if you're watching, this is not your only chance to move on to the round of 16. We're going to go to the other side of the bracket here. Still in round of 32. We're in the transition region in the bottom right corner of your bracket if you're following at home. This is going to be a 1 seed that really makes a long run, I think, for a lot of people. We have the Iron War in 1989 versus Tim. I'm on your bracket right here. You had the 2016 Junior World Championships advancing to round 2. Is there going to be an upset here, Tim? I'm guessing no.
No, and when you watch that video, and I still have that video on my VCR tape, right? VHS tape. Bob, you probably have it too. Mark, there you go, right there. Mark had so much trouble at that race putting it together. And I think even watching that during the event, I was there, and Bob, you were there, and a lot of people were there watching, saying, boy, he's going to be so close. This is going to be such a great finish. But Dave's going to win it again, just like he has. And when Mark was actually able to pull away on the run, it truly was amazing. I remember getting chills. It was so hot that day, as it always is. I remember getting chills thinking, this is amazing to actually see Mark finally do it. He had put his life into changing the ways of the past. The Junior World's feat is pretty amazing, but really hard to compare it against the Iron War.
Yeah, and the other thing when we talk about Mark and Dave, think about this for that whole decade of the 80s. Remember, we had 3 television stations back then. So it was ABC, CBS, NBC. Every winter, you turned on to watch, basically, it was like Lucy and Desi and I Love Lucy, to watch this guy named Mark Allen who won every race on the planet and looked perfect. And then you had this guy who ran like a duck named Dave Scott who won 1 major race a year, and that was on Hawaii. And every single year, Mark, something would happen. He'd be leading by 13 minutes and would blow up. He'd be leading by 5 minutes and his feet would be bleeding and he'd be walking. And then in 88, when Dave didn't race, everybody thought for sure Mark's going to win. And then he finishes 5th with a couple flats. So when he came to 89, and on that day, Dave Scott's course record was 8:28. And on that day, Dave Scott went 8:10. He took 18 minutes off his course record and lost, because they both ran 241 or 241 for Mark, for Dave, and 240 for Mark. The fact that on the greatest day he ever had, Mark Allen knocked Dave Scott off, it showed that there was a changing of the guard. And that was the most amazing race I've ever seen. It was a race from start to finish. They were separated by a second after the swim, a second after the bike, and then finally got away at mile 23.5. It was Iron War.
Yeah,
I remember the music and the telecast too, Bob, after the race was done and watching the telecast. And it was interesting because that perspective is different than what you get when you're there, and how focused they each were, gauging every step, every movement, looking for weakness in the other athlete. It was pretty amazing to watch.
No question. Yeah.
Yeah, when you break a course record and you don't win, that's how you know it was an incredible race.
Yeah.
Perhaps a little bit more. Yeah.
You break the course by 18 minutes and lose.
You're thinking, what else can I do at this point? What an amazing title.
If they make a bobblehead of you, it's probably pretty important.
Yeah.
I think that those bobbleheads are moving more than they did on race day, Bob. They were. Geez.
Perhaps a little more controversy in this one between the two of you. A 4-5 matchup. So in this 4 seed, I should say, this was the first grand final on U.S. soil in Chicago. And not only that, an American won, and an American by the name of Gwen Jorgensen won a year before her Olympic gold medal. This was her 2nd straight world title. It was part of her incredible streak, which we'll get to elsewhere in the bracket, coined Gwen Sanity. Versus, we see Karen a couple times in this bracket. This is her 95 world titles. So not just an ITU world title, but an Ironman world championship as well. We paired them together for this matchup. Bob, I'm on your side of the bracket right here. What do you got in 4-5?
You know, I've got Karen Smyers, and the reason is, one, she won ITU Worlds and Ironman in the same year. Plus, when she won, and I'm pretty sure about this, was that the first year it was draft legal for?
Correct. It was, Bob. Yep.
It was the first year, and I remember beforehand, Karen was one of those people lobbying to keep the event, to make the event not draft legal. They were not in favor of draft legal, and Les McDonald said to Karen, "Well, you're saying that because you know you can't win if it's draft legal," and it was draft legal and she won. So she proved a lot of people wrong that day, and coming from behind like she did in Kona and catching Paula in last half mile, one of the most dramatic finishes in Ironman history, that was pretty special.
Yeah, you know, Gwen had an amazing day that day. It was really hot and humid, as you would expect in Chicago. We co-produced the event, USA Triathlon, with ITU and another agency that came in to work the race. She's hanging on, right? She's with the 2 Brits late in the race, 2K away. She decides she's going to pull it out. She runs 32 and change.
Right.
What more are you going to ask for? 32 and change to win the race. I mean, men running 32, and they're like, that was the greatest day of my life. Pretty cool to watch. but the Karen Smyers double, I have said this for 15 years. I have never seen a double like that. Bob, you heard me say it in our prep work. It may never happen again. This is a 5 seed. This is probably needs to be a little bit higher seed. This was spectacular. I go with Karen Smyers on the upset.
The other thing on that one is the fact that normally you would do your Olympic distance in September, right? Work on your speed, spend a month working on your Ironman, and then do that. Well, the ITU race was in November, right? It was after Ironman. So she had to go from winning Ironman, being all beat up, and then recovering and doing a Olympic distance race, which made it even more amazing to me.
Yeah, that order is really what makes it key, going from the Ironman to a draft legal, where you have to have, quick feet on top of that.
Exactly.
And I'll never forget that, really quick, I'll never forget that race either. Joy Hansen had been injured for weeks and hadn't run for probably like 6 weeks. She did water running with an aqua jogger and finished his podium as well. So that was a really big day for Americans in Cancun.
All right.
And yeah, like you guys said, I'm sure with her training, having 2 different races like that in such a short amount of time, I think about that. I think about how did she switch up her training in such a short amount of time and still come out on top. Just really speaks to her work ethic and just how talented of an athlete she was. So sticking in the transition region, we've got a 2 seed. And we talked about in 2016 the Paralympic sweep with Alyssa Sealing, Haley Dans, and Melissa Stockwell. But the first Paralympic paratriathlon medal was Grace Norman that same year. So we have her as a 2 seed versus Tim. I'm on your bracket here, and we have triathlon added to the Paralympics, which was before 2016, but 2016 it made its debut. Tim, what do you got in this 2-7 here?
Can I call the people that did this bracket? This is like flat out cruel.
Tim, you helped with this bracket. Just want to
I must have been brain dead in the car because you couldn't put a 2-7 any closer than what you have here. Grace Norman, who, yes, as you said, PT4 was the first Olympian in Paralympics to actually come across and do what she did, and she did it with authority. Man, she put her stamp on that. She had to race hard and fast and charge to the ending. It was an amazing moment. She's a young athlete. She also happened to do Paralympics, the running event too on the track. But the Triathlon Paralympic, I still believe as a 7 seed, was so powerful and so big and so important for us that Grace kind of falls into the great things we've seen at Paralympics. So I'm going to move the 7 seed to the next line. And nothing against Grace and what she did there, but it certainly falls into the story that we get to tell about the Paralympic Games, the impact it's having.
I couldn't agree more. Grace was part of that, but the whole movement of Paralympics is paratriathlon being showcased at Paralympics is just huge.
And yeah, and you mentioned Grace being a part of that. I think she was 18 years old when she won that gold medal. I mean, what an incredible performance. And with you guys both having the 7 seed moving on, we have some upsets here going to the Paralympics in the Sweet 16. Really a strong 7 seed though, as you alluded to, Tim. So sticking on that same side of the region, we have a 3-6 matchup. Again, we've mentioned all these Olympic moments. This kind of everything falls within this. This is the 2000 debut, the first Olympic Games that featured triathlon in Sydney, Australia, versus Rick and Dick Hoyt, now 2 USA Triathlon Hall of Famers. This is what we're talking about. When the bracket has all these moments, you're going to run into 2 where you just they're both so amazing. How do I choose one to go ahead? And that's what I'm asking you both to do here. Tim, we'll start with you. What do you have in this 3-6 matchup?
Hey, Nick, we're losing you.
Can you hear me now, Tim?
I think he called you, Tim, to choose between Dick Hoyt and Rick Hoyt in Sydney Olympic debut.
Hey, can I phone a friend?
You are allowed to phone one friend.
Dave McGilvray and say, Dave, can you give us some additional insight? I mean, we know the story. It's an amazing story. Bob knows it as well as anybody. The way they have changed the sport, not just triathlon, but across the entire platform of sport is truly remarkable. And just inducted to the USA Triathlon Hall of Fame this past year says a lot. And it says that they will continue to impact, and they will be the pace setters for how quickly it happens and stuff like that with others coming on board. But that Sydney impact, I remember exactly where I was in 1994 when it was added to the Olympic Games. I remember getting the facts from Les McDonald of ITU. That was a game changer. When it was added to the Olympic Games, our sport changed. In 2000, our membership doubled every year for 10 straight years because people understood it has a different kind of component. I'm moving the Sydney 2000 Olympic debut to the next line in the bracket.
I have to agree as much, obviously, as I love and have written about and interviewed Dick and Rick Hoyt. They prove that a lot of people think our sport is for uber athletes. They watch Jan Frodeno winning the race and needing to cool down afterwards. And they couldn't really relate in those early years of who are these people I'm watching on NBC or ABC. And then first with Julie Moss and then later with Dick and Rick Hoyt, it became less about, hey, this is some uber athlete, to what would you do for your son? What would you do as a dad for your son? And so many more people out there can relate to a father wanting to do something special for his son. And that helped take our sport to another level. But obviously the Sydney Olympic debut is unparalleled in what it did for the impact it had on our sport.
This is going to be one of those really tough matchups where you feel like you can't go wrong and you can't go right at the same time. This is what's going to be as we get closer and closer to the finish of the greatest moment of all time. We're going to have some tough decisions. Moving on now to the run region, still in the round of 32. Once again, a 3 and a 6 seed. We mentioned Gwen Jorgensen a lot. This was her historic win streak. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tim. 13 straight World Triathlon victories at the highest level, 12 of those being World Triathlon Series races. It earned the name Gwen Sanity, which culminated in 2016 with her.
We're losing you, Nick.
Can you hear me now, guys?
Got you now.
Yeah, you're back.
This is Zoom.
Yeah, Nick, it was 2 years. It was April 26th to April 8th. She did not lose a race. You talk about insanity. That's pretty amazing. Included 7 WTS wins. Matter of fact, to do this again, I don't know what's gonna take, but it shows that she was truly remarkable, and Gwen's sanity was not overstated. Let me tell you right now.
Tim, what do you have in that matchup? That 3-6.
Well, you know, it's interesting, and Bob can certainly espouse to Lynn what she was able to do. She nearly beat every guy in the race, right? And did it with authority. Kind of like, take that. Pretty amazing. And I think it actually had more impact on women, showing that they could compete at a highest level than more people maybe ever thought at the particular point in time. Maybe not. I still like the Gwen Sanity streak because I think that's going to be one of those few unique things that you may not see again for a long, long time.
I think Gwen Sanity was huge, and 13 in a row was amazing. But I'm going with the upset, and for a couple of reasons. One, at that point, I think endurance sports was considered a bastion of guys. It was really something that just guys did. The fact that this woman, who was a great swimmer and a national time trial champion, she swam and rode her way. She rode her way in the second place out of 15 starters and 12 finishers, and eventually finished 5th overall, which I thought proved right away that this sport is an equal opportunity abuser. We don't care if you're a man, if you're a woman, if you're missing a leg or in a wheelchair, come on out, bring what you got, and we'll hurt you. And Lynn showed right away. And actually from there, she ended up starting Ultra Magazine. I think it was called Ultra Magazine.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, she was the founder of that. So wow. She did a lot after going and finishing 5th overall in that second ever iron. And she was part of the Sports Illustrated article. And I think people saw, oh, there's women who do this too, because there was no men in 78. So she really was a Roger Bannister, a Catherine Switzer type of personality, changing the game.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Bob. She played hoops at UCLA. Is that right?
I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if she.
Okay, maybe not. I was thinking that she played collegiate sports at a high level in a completely different sport. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think she swam, but I'm not positive.
Okay, all right.
You mentioned her significance. I mean, all you got to do is look at this bracket and all of the amazing women in our sport who have won Olympic medals, Paralympic medals, and I think, like you said, Bob, she was a trailblazer.
Yeah, you know what's cool about our sport, and Tim remembers this, back then, if you went to running events, there was X amount of money for the men and less for the women. There was no sport that had equal prize money. Triathlon, right from the beginning, because of Lynn Lemaire and Sally Edwards, and so many, and obviously Valerie Silk, who was the race director for Ironman, so many impactful women who really charted the direction for our sport, and Lynn was one of those people.
And one of those women, it's a great segue to our 2 seed in the run region. The next matchup here in the round of 32 is Susan Williams. She was the first U.S. athlete to win an Olympic medal, winning a bronze in 2004. Bob, you had Jim Mclaren going on to the round of 32. So that's what we got here. We got a 2-10 for you. What do you got in this matchup?
Well, you know me, man. Jimmy Mclaren. Susan Williams, you're right. She was the first American to medal, and really the first until Gwen, right? And so then you've got Jim Mclaren, whose impact started back when he was a runner and triathlete, and then moved on to, after his second accident, to impact so many thousands of lives. And to be honest, I don't know if we would be in the Paralympics if it wasn't for Jim Mclaren. So I think that the Jim Mclaren is my vote for that region.
So we got a 10 seed going to the Sweet 16 here. That's awesome, Bob.
Love that. The Susan Williams story is an amazing one. Known as really a power triathlete, right? Just you give a really hard bike course, she's going to do well. Really tough run course, she's going to do well. That day, she crashes on the bike course, right? She goes down. She has to get back up and try to get back in the pack. When you watch the race, the race is done. There's nothing that she's going to be able to do to get back into the mix. But she does. She perseveres, runs 37 and change to become the first. The thing, we've been able to hang our hat whenever we talk about our women because of what she did with that Olympic medal. I'm going to slide Susan through as the 2 seed in this very hard to determine upset, but I'm going to.
What was cool, Tim, is her coach was Siri Lindley, who had just basically retired, and she really helped Susan get that bronze.
Bob, you're really helping me with these segues here because that's the next matchup. We've got Siri Lindley. Her 01 ITU world title is the 5 seed. Going up against Hunter Kemper, qualifying for his 4th Olympic Games. So, Bob, I'll switch over to your bracket here. What did you have in this 4-5?
Qualified Siri was amazing in what she did. I think she won 2 titles in a row, if I'm not mistaken. But 4 Olympics, that's a drop the mic. When you're, 4 Olympics, Wheaties boxes, and the way he made that 4th Olympic team, he'd been injured all year, awful injury. And he had to finish, I think it was either top 8 or top 9 in that race, Tim, right? To get that spot. And it was really his only race of the year. And he ended up doing that. So I'm going Hunter.
So you got Hunter Kemper going to the Olympic Games in 2012. So this was at WTS San Diego where he qualified for his 4th Olympic Games. And, like you said, coming back from the injury, having not raced in, I think, 7 months. Just what a story there for Hunter.
3 surgeries in 3 days. Doctors didn't know what he was going to be able to do.
Right. That's why I think that's so special.
He comes back with 2.5 months before the trials. And I remember being in San Diego when he finished. I'm like, you know what? You should never, ever bet against Hunter Kemper because he'll burn you. And for all those that said there's no chance he's going to do it, he burned him because he did it. Siri misses the Olympic team in 2000, right? Comes back is on fire. She no way can beat her. And that isn't because of anything other than she was determined and strong-willed to say, just because I didn't make 2000 team, I was an alternate, doesn't make that I'm not going to be the best in the world. And she just annihilated everybody in that year and obviously won the world title. I'm still going to carry Hunter through because, as Bob said, 4th Olympic Games is amazing. And there have only been a few people that have ever done that in consecutive order. Hunter will go down as one of the best ever, obviously, in our Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it was 2 years ago, I believe now, right, Tim? He was inducted into the USA Triathlon Hall of Fame.
Yep.
So we got both of you guys got Hunter Kemper moving on to the round of 16. In our final round of 32 matchup, Tim, I'm on your side of the bracket. We've got the 1 seed, Julie Moss, her crawl of fame. Tim, for people who aren't familiar with the story, can you fill them in a little bit?
But Bob, you were there firsthand. You probably can do a really, really amazing description of that. I'll defer to Bob on that because he knows it and told it many, many times.
What was special about that was there was a lot of things going on and why that was so important to our sport. One, you had two 22-year-old co-eds, Kathleen McCartney and Julie Moss, and Julie had this big lead. And like I said a little earlier, people would watch the TV show on ABC in 1980 and 1981, and you see Dave Scott winning in 1980, you see John Howard winning in 81. The guy sitting on a couch in Pittsburgh can't really relate to those guys. So now he's watching, and he see this girl who's 22 years old with freckles, with a borrowed bra and a trucker's hat on, and he's watching what I call the original reality TV, as her body is coming apart at the seams. And you're watching her, she gets to a lead drive, and she collapses, and she looks like Bambi. You know, her legs aren't going to hold her up. And you're sitting watching this at home, and you're thinking, this is crazy. This is stupid. And then you watch her collapse again right before the finish, and you see Kathleen McCartney pass her in 50 feet from the finish. And then the camera goes back, and now Julie is on all fours, crawling as the camera is zooming in on her. And you see her collapse on the finish line with her arm across the finish line with a smile on her face. And then they pick her up on a stretcher and carry her away. And ABC at that time, when they're running Wild Water Sports, they would run 3 different vignettes. And so they left right from Ironman to roller hockey or something else. So people watching at home had no idea if this woman was alive or dead. So they had to fly Julie and Kathleen to New York the following weekend and put them on with Jim McKay, the dean of Wild World of Sports, to assure the American public this sport doesn't kill people. And because of they had such great footage, they moved the show up because they knew they had something very special. That led to a second Ironman in '82. The event had been in February. Now they did one in October. The United States Triathlon Series started in June of '82, showcasing who? Julie Moss and Kathleen McCartney. And the first USTS race, Dave Scott wins, Scott Molina second, Scott Tinley third, Mark Allen fourth. So all of that comes from Julie Moss and Kathleen McCartney. And what people don't know is while this crawl was going on, Valerie Silk, the race director for Ironman, was in a trailer with the heads of ABC telling her they would not be back, that she had violated her contract by allowing Bruce Dern and a different group called Freewheeling Films to film the event. And the producers yelling at Valerie going, Valerie, you guys have violated. This will be the last Ironman. We won't be covering it again. And his assistant kept coming to the trailer going, boss, you need to come see this. This is pretty special. And he goes, not now. So when Valerie left the trailer, she didn't see the crawl. And she thought the sport was history. And Julie Moss asked her when she went to the medical tent, Julie says, Val, is it okay if I come back next year? I'm sorry, I got second. And Valerie's like, yeah, you can come back, knowing there would be no Ironman. The event would not happen again because they had violated their contract and Ironman was going to be history. So for a lot of different reasons, that moment became incredibly special. Plus, it showed people sitting at home when they were watching and they're going, this is crazy, this is silly. And what is it about that finish line that's so impactful that someone will crawl on their hands and knees to get there? And how do I get some of that in my life? That led to what we see now.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing to add to that. That's great job on that, Bob. Today, I'll talk to people who've been around a long time, and they still tell me that the visual in their mind, they have maybe 4 or 5 visuals they've had over years of racing. This is one of them. And
absolutely.
At it and the impact that it had and the motivation it serves today in them just giving everything they have, empty the tank and just let it out. And it continues to impact even today.
And you don't want to underestimate the impact, because at that point, Ironman, the numbers were probably okay on ABC, But from then on, it was huge. I mean, they used Julie's crawl in the agony of defeat in the opening of Wide World of Sports for the next 20 years. So it became, and when I was talking to Jim Lampley, who was the announcer for that event, Jim told me that that moment was one of the most 5 impactful moments in the history of ABC Wide World of Sports.
Wow. That's cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah, you picture that image. It's kind of the embodiment of the human spirit, you know? It's not about the fact that she didn't win, but she gave it everything she had to get across that finish line.
And it's funny because it's not often. I mean, ask people who won the 1981 Ironman. What woman won the 1980 Ironman? What woman won in 82? You mentioned the name Julie Moss. Everybody knows the name Julie Moss. They don't even realize she didn't win. But people don't know. They know Kathleen McCartney a little bit, but only in association with, oh, that's the blonde girl who beat her.
Agreed.
Amazing moment. We'll talk more about that soon. But thanks to your guys' picks. We're now in the round of 16, the Sweet 16. We're going to jump back to the other side of the bracket. Tim, I'm still on your side. We're going to go to the swim region here. And sticking with 1 seeds, we have Gwen's Olympic gold versus the U.S. Triathlon Series. What do you got in this one?
I still like Gwen's Olympic gold. I believe it's symbolic of the highest you can achieve in that style of racing. And the way she did it was unprecedented, and I've got to move her on in the bracket.
That is a toughie. I mean, Gwen's Olympic gold impacted so many people in this country. At the same time, USTS brought the age group to life. It brought age groupers who couldn't imagine doing an Ironman to realize that they could do our sport. So I'm going to go USTS.
At the upset, we got our first 1 seed going out. Bob Babbitt's bracket has USTS. Going to the Elite Eight. It's nice to have some upsets here, Bob.
Well, you know, I mean, everybody, that's what's great about this stuff. It's discussion points. I like it.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to a vote, who has the most votes. But really, this is personal. Everybody has different favorite moments for different reasons.
Absolutely.
That's what's great about doing something like this. Moving down here, still in the swim region, we got the Sweet 16 matchup between the Ironman craze and Mark Allen's ITU world title in 1989. Bob, I'll stick with you on this one. This is a 2 versus a 3.
The growth, let's see, where are we at here? So it's Ironman craze and Mark Allen. Just so basically the growth of Ironman over all these years. I'll go with Ironman craze.
All right. So that is specifically the 1978 first Ironman, but it did start the whole sport.
Yeah. Yep.
I will echo that. I agree. I think Mark's title was amazing. The great thing is that Mark made his name within this Ironman umbrella.
Yep.
You know? So it kind of fits as a subset within that, even though this was not that distance. This was an Olympic distance race, but I'll go with Ironman as well.
All right, so we got the 78 Ironman. Started it all. Both you guys have that going to the quarterfinals. Sticking to the Sweet 16 here and talking about first iconic moments. The first triathlon versus, Tim, you had Katie Zafaris' 2019 ITU world title, 1 versus 4.
You know, it's interesting. People have said, well, what if the infamous day never happened and no people didn't feel that this was something they ever wanted to do or try? Where would it be today as a sport?
Yeah,
probably would be where we are today. Triathlon, born in '74, got to move on the bracket for me, even though Katie's year was amazing in 19.
I agree. So many, I mean, really, if you think about what's amazing, the sport started in 74. By 94, 95, we were into the Olympics. 20 years. That is pretty amazing. For a sport to go from first event to being accepted in the Olympics, and then in 2000 being showcased, not just in the Olympics, but being the first event of the games to showcase the city of Sydney. So the first triathlon in 74 to me, as much as I love Katie, got to go with that.
Yeah.
Both got the first triathlon going on to the quarterfinals. Our other Sweet 16 matchup here is the 2016 U.S. Paralympic sweep versus, Bob, you had the 79 Sports Illustrated article. I believe this is a 2 versus a 6 in the second round here.
I still got to go with, I think so much of the stuff that happened later would not have happened without the stuff that happened earlier. So I will err on the side of history and go with the SI 79.
I'm gonna say the same. That article opened the door for coverage of the sport, for more talk and chatter, for people giving it a shot. That can't be overstated. Too critical for me to not advance as well.
So we both.
And what's interesting, led to 1980, the first time it was on ABC.
Yep, Wide World of Sports.
Both got the 6 seed, 79 Sports Illustrated going on to the quarterfinals. Jumping across here on the bracket, Tim, we're still with you here. This is in the Sweet 16, the 7 seed, triathlon being added to the Paralympics versus, this is kind of Paralympic versus Olympic right here in the Sweet 16. The Sydney Olympic debut. How do you choose between those two, Tim?
Nick, you're going to get me in trouble. Upset with me.
You got to make some tough
making
decisions.
This pick. When I saw what happened in Sydney, I was the Olympic team manager. I witnessed it for 6 weeks, the lead up to that. When I was there, goosebumps down my back. And that's just me, staying on the sidelines. I can't imagine what people were thinking when they're actually watching it on television. Sydney Olympic debut has got to be the advancement for me, just the impact that it had on that day for the sport internationally, and for obviously people in America.
What was great about that is how all our worlds collided, because the woman who was producing the Olympic triathlon was Lisa Lax, who was actually the producer for NBC on the Ironman. So she was very insistent that the first event of the games be the triathlon, because she knew the sport and she knew she could showcase the Sydney Opera House, the bridge, all of that through this sport. And to this day, when I talk to McKeely Jones or someone else who was racing, they'll tell you it was the loudest crowd they'd ever had. It was really a perfect storm, because you had this brand new sport and you had this endurance sports crazy country of Australia. And that's where the showcase was. Plus you had a producer who loved the sport. So everything came together, and you had basically sprint finishes for both races. Nothing could be better.
You had 2 American women that, with 1 lap to go on the run, were right there with McKeely and the 2 Swiss. So it was amazing for all of us.
Yep.
So no disagreements there. Both have the 3 seed Sydney Olympic debut going on to the quarterfinals. Same side of the bracket, transition region, Sweet 16. We've got the 1 seed, the Iron War 1989 versus Karen Smyers' world titles. Bob, starting with you.
Yeah.
1-5 right here.
I'm excited to see what Bob's going to say about this.
Iron War, come on now. How could I say anything else? Iron War is just, it's sad. It captured a whole decade of racing between those 2 guys. It was really, really impactful, and watching it culminate like that. And the funny part is that throughout the 80s, Mark had all this bad luck over there. And there's this thought, and it's something people talk about, that Madame Pele, that it's bad luck to take lava home from the Big Island. And Tim's heard this, right? You don't ever bring a lava home from the Big Island. Well, before the 89 race, Mark Allen's mom realized there was this piece of black something on her bookshelf, and she brought it back to the island. And Mark never lost after that. She didn't tell him beforehand, but then afterwards she did. And it's funny, because I called the Volcano Museum to ask them about this whole thing with the lava, and they told me, they said, listen, people go take lava, they go home, and all of a sudden something awful happens to a family member. They put it in a FedEx box and send it to the lava museum, Volcano Museum over on the Big Island, and say, hey, I picked this up at the corner of Hualalai and Ali'i Drive. Can you please drop this off? And by the way, here's a bottle of gin, which is Madame Pele's favorite drink. And I'm like, what do you guys do when you get, and they've got a whole trophy case type of thing with all these FedEx packets in there. I said, what do you do? He said, well, we drink the gin and we throw the rocks out the window. But before that race, Mark Allen didn't know that Mom returned the lava, and he never lost again.
You know what? Yeah, and that's some amazing history right there. I'll forever, as I mentioned in the last round, say that Karen Smyers' feat will be really, really hard to match. But I too Phil, that what happened on that day, what was truly important for the sport in changing who was controlling the sport and who had on the men's side was able to really start the next layer of wins and come back, had the confidence to be able to do what happened. And that certainly kicked it off for Mark.
No question.
Both got the 1 seed advancing. We'll start at the top here in the run region, sticking with the 1 seed. Julie Moss's crawl versus Hunter Kemper qualifying for his 4th Olympic Games. Tim, I got you up right here.
Yeah, and again, this is really hard, but the Julie Moss crawl, I still hear about it today. People still tell me about it. It's really going to be hard to beat the 1 seed in this particular case. I'm going with the 1.
I couldn't agree more. I just think the number of people who heard about this sport and got into this sport when they realized that you didn't need to be some uber athlete to do it, that this young woman was able to do it. Why can't I do it? I think that impact has lasted our lifetime.
It's both 1 seeds on the right side of the bracket advancing. Bob, sticking with you here. So we have Jim Mclaren, the 10 seed, versus Lynn Lemaire's first female Ironman, the 6 seed.
Ooh.
What do you got in that Sweet 16?
Oh, man.
Well, that's you, Bob.
Thanks, bud. I just think as somebody who obviously is started Challenge Athletes Foundation, it's what Jimmy did, and Lynn impacted people the same way. She brought women in, but I think what Jimmy did is he impacted not just challenged athletes, but all people thinking, hey, this guy's missing a leg and he's doing this. Why can't I do this? So I think a lot of people drew power from what Jimmy did and also hope. And then following up after a second accident, just all the people have been impacted. So, yeah.
Orange County, that was where he got hit the second time, right, Bob?
Mission Viejo. It was the Orange County Performing Arts Center Triathlon. Yeah.
Yep.
A van through a closed intersection, hit the back of his bike, propelled him headfirst into a pole, became a quadriplegic. And the thing that hit me the most, Tim, was after, the goal was to put on a little triathlon and raise $25,000 to buy Jimmy a van with hand controls. I'd covered a lot of wheelchair athletes, and the one thing I'd hear from them was, hey, the worst part about my injury is I'm 30 years old. Here come mom and dad back in my life. No sense of self-independence. So the idea was to get Jimmy a van with hand controls and raise $25,000. We raised 49 through a little triathlon in La Jolla Cove, thought our job was done. And 3 amputee women came to us and said, did you know that if you get injured, your health insurance covers a walking around leg or an everyday wheelchair? Nothing to do with sport is covered because they consider sport a luxury item. And you and I both know sport's a huge part of who we are and what we do. And so that's when we got our 501(c) and decided if someone needed a piece of equipment, training, or travel to stay in the game of life through sport, the Challenge Athletes Foundation would be there. All of that started with the sport of triathlon. And now, like I said, 26,000 grants, raised over $112 million. And we just sent out 3,921 grants in March, totaling about $5.9 million to athletes in all 50 states and Puerto Rico, plus 43 countries and in 103 different sports. So the little sport of triathlon has helped create all of that.
Yeah, what an impact on our sport and so many people's lives. Tim, you actually had a completely different matchup here in your Sweet 16. You had Susan Williams' bronze medal in the Sweet 16 versus Gwen Sanity. 3 versus 2 here. Tim, what do you have between these two?
I can remember the day when Susan won that medal with her daughter in her arms, right? With the medal draped around her neck. Sydney looking at it, just saying, wow, not even really knowing what she was thinking, but wow, this is pretty amazing. It was pretty amazing. Gwen's feat, again, unprecedented. It'll be really, really hard to match. But at the time, what that medal meant to us was such women's teams and what it meant for the sport in America. We needed that medal really, really badly at that point in our growth and development. So I'm going to advance Susan as the 2 seed on the bracket.
That's a good call. Yeah. Funding comes with medals.
And to what you both have said is just people seeing a sport for the first time at the Olympics. I think of myself as a sports fan. Like, there are sports that I don't follow, but I see an amazing Olympic moment. I want to learn more about that sport. So it's hard to to undervalue just how important those moments are and getting eyeballs on the sport of triathlon and more people to know what this is all about. So we're now in the Elite Eight. Tim, we got your picks right here. You've got Gwen's Olympic gold versus the 78 first Ironman. You've got the 1974 first triathlon, a 1 seed, versus the 79 Sports Illustrated. Julie Moss's crawl, Susan Williams' bronze medal, the Iron War, and the Sydney Olympic debut in your top 8. Tim, will start on the top left here in the swim regions. This is to go to the Final Four. The 1 seed, Gwen's Olympic gold medal versus that first iconic Ironman that started the whole craze in 1978.
That's an easy one, Tim.
This is where the tough decisions come.
Yeah.
Road, baby.
I still believe it's got to be Ironman craze in 78. Just the impact it's had and will continue to have in the world. We're a different sport today than we were 20 years ago, but it's still because of all the things that really started back in those early days. People just committed to doing something over the top, and I don't think you can overstate that.
I agree.
So, Bob, I believe you had an upset in this past round, right? So you had USTS versus the Ironman craze. Do you still have the Ironman craze moving on?
Yeah, Ironman goes on.
So both you guys, Ironman craze, the race that started it all in 78. Moving on to the Final Four.
When you put this out, Nick, will it say first Ironman 78?
Yeah.
Rather than Ironman craze? Yeah, good. Because I think,
All right, Bob, we're sticking with you here. In your quarterfinal matchup.
Yes.
The first triathlon in 1974 versus that 1979 Sports Illustrated article. What do you got in the Final Four here?
I got to start with the first triathlon.
I'm going to echo that on my bracket too, Nick.
All right. Yeah, it's one of those, as the first race, it kind of started everything. It's hard to pick against it.
Yep.
All right. Give me just 1 second here. So you guys both have your side of the Final Four. Looks the same so far. Tim, I'm going to stick with you here and go to the other side of the bracket. The transition region final, the Elite Eight, the 1989 Iron War versus the Sydney Olympic debut. What do you got in this one?
If we had not seen a transformation as a sport because of Sydney, it would be even tighter yet. But I was able to live it every day. Its impact on membership, its impact on the sport. Sydney Olympic debut, I'm going to push it to the next round. It was just too unreal for me to see the impact that particular race had on what we even do today with membership.
I agree on that, Nick, mainly because this is for USA Triathlon. I think what the Iron War event did was on a worldwide level. The sport went crazy, and I think it did with the Olympic debut as well, but especially in the U.S. I think because of the great job NBC did covering it, the sport. I think, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong. I think you guys went up to like 125,000 members from Bupkis very quickly.
Yeah, we were 14,000 to over 100,000 in 8 years.
Yeah, and that to me that was huge.
So far, the two of you both have the same 3 in the Final Four. The first Ironman in 78, starting the whole craze. The first triathlon in 1974, and the Sydney Olympics. And now it's time for the final spot. Bob, sticking with you. The 1 seed, Julie Moss's crawl across the finish line versus Jim Mclaren in his Ironman.
Okay, well, the Julie Moss crawl, as much as I love Jimmy, the impact was so gigantic on the sport, in sport in the U.S. It was huge. So I go Julie, stick with number 1 seed.
I am as well.
Tim, I believe you had Julie versus Susan Williams' bronze, but you two are picking Julie Moss's crawl.
Yep. I still believe the impact still exists today.
It's that moment. Yep.
All right, so we both got the same Final Fours here. As I can drag this down. Let's stick on the same side here, Tim. We're in the Final Four now. Who do you have going to the championship of the Tri-Week Triathlon Tournament? Julie Moss's Crawl of Fame or the 2000 Sydney Olympic debut. What do you got?
Julie Moss crawl. Got to go with it.
Oh, ditto. Julie Moss's crawl was the most impactful event.
All right. Both have Julie Moss in her crawl of fame, as it's dubbed, going to the championship of the Tri-Week Triathlon Tournament. And now there's just one matchup remaining. Bob, I'm on your side of the bracket right now. So this is the first triathlon in 1974 versus the first Ironman in 78 that started the whole craze. Very tough decision, but what do you have going to the championship?
I would go with the first triathlon 74. I just think that, it's got to start somewhere. And the fact that the track club guys had that, the wherewithal, they had the vision. They had the vision to see that this could be a real sport. And I think the first trophy had the word triathlon spelled wrong on it. And it might have been a bowling trophy for all I know. But yeah, it was, people didn't know, but it caught on quickly. And we realized quickly it changed lives.
To think that 46 people showed up that first race. I don't care what the French say, that they started it in the 20s. This is really what we can acknowledge as kickstarting the sport for us that we live in and love today.
Ask the French if they've got a plaque at the start of an island that was.
I know it. I love my French friends, but yep, I agree with you.
We had where the mayor actually came out there to indicate the Fiesta Island as the birthplace of the sport of triathlon.
All right, Tim, I'm going to put you on the spot here and have you go first.
Final pick.
With the championship. Tim, I need you to tell
Bob gets
all
to
of
pick
us
first
right
on the championship.
What is the greatest triathlon moment ever? Ever.
I still think it's great that we had the original triathlon in 74, but I think it's Julie Moss's moment just because of the ramifications of that. Nationally, internationally, I think it led to the creation of USTS series. It led to Ironman becoming something that people could train for because now it was in October. They could train from all over the world. And from a U.S. perspective, it led to eventually to the Olympic gold medal that Gwen won. So I think it all started with what Julie did. Julie's the fact that what Julie and Kathleen did, it changed perception what women could accomplish. Interesting story. Jim Lampley was a commentator at that Wide World of Sports Ironman, and because he was there when Julie Moss finished, when they did the first ever Olympic marathon in 1984, they wanted him to be at the finish to interview what turned out to be Joan Benoit, because he was considered the sage when it came to covering women's endurance sports. And that came from being there when Julie Moss finished second at the Ironman World Championship in February of 82.
Tim, what's your greatest moment ever?
I know, Bob, you've been around the sport longer than I have. This is my 34th year. And I can reflect on a lot of things in my time at USA Triathlon, but I can still not capture the emotion, the sensation, the impact that event had on our sport. And I hope that people are doing this will go back and they'll look at the video and they'll look at what happened that day and be truly motivated by it and inspired by it and doing all the things that they can do, again, to show that it's not just about women. It does spur the women's movement forward, as Bob noted. But I think it also shows just how much character she had and how much it meant to her. And she hadn't been engrossed in the sport at any high level, and it was still that important for her to do what she did. So I too, like Julie Moss, as the number one pick of the tournament.
So both Tim Yount, Bob Babbitt have Julie Moss's Crawl of Fame in 1982 with the Ironman World Champion as the greatest moment in U.S. triathlon history. Guys, I just want to say thank you so much for doing this. This has been a ton of fun. And ultimately, it's up to everybody watching to decide what the greatest moment ever is. So we will find out starting during National Triathlon Week on June 22nd. So looking forward to it. Thanks again, guys, for your time, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks so much, Nick. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thanks, Nick.
Guys.